Well, good morning. Welcome to Christ Table. My name is Kevin Young. I have the privilege of serving at Christ Table as lead clergy. If you'd like to know more about Christ Table, very simple. All you got to do is go to that website URL right there, www.christstable.today. If you'd like to know more about this study in particular, we've got an entire study guide at go.christstable.today/divinecomedy. Absolutely free PDF that'll give you a study guide with cultural context, background, some questions in order to help you go a little bit deeper into the study as well as the application. You can get that right there. If you would like to help us out financially and get a printed copy of that study, you can get it right there as well. Just click on the button on that URL that says get the box, and it comes with that printed curriculum as well as several other things that will help you in this study in particular. I want to make sure that you're aware of one more thing. Reconstruct Your Faith. This book is available. It is a great resource for those who are disconnected, disillusioned, done with the church, with Christianity, with Christians, or who are just navigating their faith and trying to figure it all out. You can find out more information about that at drkevinyoung.com. So we're in this study. We're coming close to the end. We've still got another week in it, as well as today, where we're looking into the comedy, the wit, the wisdom, the humor of Jesus and how he used funny words and stories and phrases and awkward situations in order to teach. And he does it a lot because a lot is lost in translation, and humor and laughter and awkward irony is a great way in order to get a point across. So we find ourselves today piggybacking on an idea that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier this week, but we're going to go a little bit deeper because Jesus uses this illustration a second time, this idea of blind guides. And today, that last one was in Luke. This one's in Matthew, or was it Matthew 23? This one's in Matthew chapter 15. So apparently it was an illustration that he used more than once because, well, it's a good one. A blind guide. As we talked about a couple of days ago, a tour guide. You ever seen a blind tour guide? Guide through the wilderness. You ever seen one of those? A docent in a hospital or in a large building trying to get you from one place to the other. Have you ever seen someone who is blind doing that? It's probably not going to be very helpful. And so Jesus uses this as an illustration for people who set themselves up as guides, but who are metaphorically blind, who are spiritually blind. So in today's text, here we go, Matthew chapter 15, verses 10 through 20. So Jesus called the crowd to come and to hear, and he said, listen, and try to understand this. Even the way Jesus phrases things, if you just kind of read it aloud, as most people would say these things, they end up being pretty funny. Try to understand this if you can. It's not what goes into your mouth that makes you dirty. You're dirty by the words that come out of your mouth. So he's going to kind of double down here because the disciples come to him and they ask, do you realize that you just offended a whole bunch of people by what you just said? Because there was this teaching that you are defiled by what goes in to your mouth. It wasn't so much what you said, the words that you used. You could say whatever you want, but if you ate certain things, then you would be dirty. You would have this disconnection from God. You would be unclean in not a physical sense necessarily, but in a spiritual sense, you would be unclean. In a relational sense, you would be unclean. You shouldn't be around other people, and God didn't want to be around you either because of what you ate. And Jesus says it's not what goes in, it's really what comes out that makes you unclean. The disciples are like, whoa, pump the brakes, Jesus. You're making a whole lot of religious people mad by saying that the rules and the boundaries that they have set up for everybody else aren't of God. And the text of the Old Testament here just really seems to kind of back them up, not you, Jesus. So stop offending people, okay? They're going to stop giving to the ministry. You're going to make them upset. They're going to unfriend you on Facebook, and they're going to block you on Twitter. They're going to QT you and really just flame you. Jesus replies, every plant not planted by my Father in heaven will be uprooted. So ignore them. At some point down the road, if they don't get their act together, they're not going to have an act to get together anymore. No one's going to be listening to them. They're not going to have a position anymore of authority or influence in order to speak. They're blind guides leading the blind. And if one blind person guides another, they're going to both fall into a ditch. And this would have been an illustration that they would have understood, because if you've been to Israel, seen pictures of Israel, then you'll understand this. And I can just tell you, it's a very rocky, rugged terrain. It's a bit like similar to maybe Death Valley or the desert, where you have all of this, cliffs and embankments and places to hide. If you're in the Grand Canyon or you're in Colorado and you walk in the wrong place, you could stumble and fall off the side of a cliff, tumble down the side of a mountain. Like, there was always a lot of danger in going, especially in dark or if you couldn't see. And so blind leading other blind people, if one blind person guides another, they're both going to fall into a ditch, because the person who's leading isn't paying attention, doesn't see the danger, and it's going to end up putting other people in danger as well. They're all going to end up in the pit. So Peter says to Jesus, explain to us the parable that says that people aren't defiled by what they eat. Peter's like, can we kind of back up an illustration here? Can we turn it just back a few pages, because I'm still back here? And Jesus rolls his eyes. Don't you understand yet? Oh my gosh, Peter. Seriously, I talk about this all the time. This isn't a hard thing to get. And so Jesus kind of picks it up into a PG-13 illustration about the endocrine system, about the body. Anything you eat passes through your stomach and comes out your crapper. It's kind of a nice way of saying what Jesus actually said. You ship it out of your body. Right? I mean, that's the way it works, right? In one hole, out the other. This is what Jesus is saying here. But the words you speak, they're not coming from here down through and out. They're starting here. They don't start outside. They start from the inside. And that's what defiles you. The stuff that goes in here, it all comes out the same place and looks the same once it gets through you. That's not what makes you clean or unclean. Wipe your butt and move on. What makes you clean or unclean is what comes out of a good well or a sewer in your heart. For from the heart come evil thoughts and murder and adultery and all sexual immorality and theft and lying and slander and all of these things that are harmful to you and to other people. These are what defile you. Eating without washing your hands, that's not going to defile you before God. I know that that's what's being taught. Y'all can be offended about that. But you're blind. You're blind if you're trying to make other people think that you see, and you don't know a whole bunch of people are following you. They're following you off a cliff, into a pit. Follow a blind man into a ditch, Peter. Brilliant plan. All my disciples, follow these religious leaders who are so totally misguided on what it is that God's rules and law is supposed to be, and have completely and utterly missed the point of all of those things. Yeah, go ahead and go follow those people. Brilliant plan. Follow them into their ditch. Follow them into their sewer. See how dirty you get. Continue on as you were. But what really makes you dirty, what really makes you unclean, is what's coming out of this right here. The way you treat your neighbor. The way you treat and think of other people. That's the problem right there. And spiritual myopia is contagious. I have astigmatism. Astigmatism is essentially a myopia. It's a form of it. Myopia is where you're able to see things that are right in front of you, but in the distance, you're not able to see what's coming up. So you might be able to see maybe something that's right in front of your face, but everything else you're blind to. Jesus says that's essentially contagious. Whenever you have spiritual myopia, Whenever you can't see beyond yourself, then other people who are around you, who are following you, learn that behavior. And they learn to not be able to see beyond themselves, to only be able to see themselves and not the effect that they have on other people. They live within their own bubble. You live within your own bubble. That's spiritual myopia. That's contagious. And you both are going to end up falling into a pit because you are blind. And by pit, he means septic tank, sewer. So work on your heart. Work on what's on the inside of you. And stop worrying so much about other people. Unless what you're worrying about is how you can take care of them and protect them. Love them. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. It's been good to be with you today and this week. Looking forward to being with you next week as we continue on, but also wrap up this series. If you'd like to get that study materials to help you go deeper into today's text and today's study, all you have to do is visit the URL that's right there, go.christstable.today/divinecomedy. It's been good to be with you today. Looking forward to being back with you next week. Until that time, happy reading.